Hi everyone, welcome to the Teacher's Point of View. I mean, I'm super excited to have Zena on. We've kind of become friends in some respects in the last few weeks, haven't we, Zena? And we kind of have a lot of similarities and passion for kind of evolving education and moving it in the right direction. I mean, you've had a pretty incredible career in teaching, and you're an aspiring head teacher, so you've kind of quite driven in obviously where you're going in terms of your career. I mean, can you just kind of introduce yourself very quickly and kind of the journey you've been on?
Yeah, of course. So born and bred in London. I became a teacher 5 years after I left university, after my dad kind of kept saying to me, you need to be a teacher, you need to be a teacher. And, you know, I didn't have a great time at school, but after much persuasion, my dad convinced me. I did the PGCE, became a teacher in 2004. Started off my career as a drama teacher in London, stayed there for 2 years, and then quite quickly moved into middle leadership in Milton Keynes. So I relocated to Milton Keynes and worked around the Luton, Bedfordshire and Buckinghamshire area. And then in 2007, I moved up to Leeds and I took on a post for assistant principal. I had been a senior leader before that, but it was my first assistant principal post leading behaviour and safeguarding and alternative provision. So that was really interesting. And now I'm a leadership consultant in a school in Bradford. So still on that journey, really.
Fantastic. Miss London, yeah?
Miss London, North London. Come on.
Yeah, I mean, obviously you've had quite a remarkable journey, and the thing is about what you did. You kind of specialised in drama, and I know your kind of story in drama a little bit. I mean, you're quite passionate about the subject, and you are quite for like the relevance of drama within the curriculum. I mean, there's a lot of schools that kind of are maybe fizzling it out a little bit because they want to try catch up on the core subjects. But why do you think it's so important in the 21st century that drama stays relevant within the curriculum?
Look, I didn't take drama GCSE because when I was at school and I chose GCSE drama and English literature, they were in the same kind of block, and I was told there was no way I could do both of them, that I was more than likely going to pass the drama rather than the English lit. And so my parents really pushed and said, no way, you're doing the literature and you can do drama in your own time. But if I'd be honest with you, if it wasn't for drama, it wouldn't have given me the confidence to speak publicly, to understand how to communicate with people, to relate to people, to empathise with people. And I could do that through different characters and different contexts through drama. And that's why I think subjects like drama are really important. And that creativity that we have through drama and the performing arts subjects is really important. But you're right, and now unfortunately league tables come in and you know, people might not see drama as an important subject, but I can assure you that it can change lives. It really can.
I agree. I mean, I remember being in year 9. It's a shame. I mean, I wish I kind of pursued it a little bit longer, but in year 9, I remember, I mean, I never really thought about drama as a subject, but in year 9, I had this drama teacher and she thought I was really good. Right? I don't know why. I mean, I'm not a drama queen or anything, but I promise you. But I mean, she thought I was really good, and she basically was banging on to me to pick it for GCSEs, and I ended up picking. And then basically there was an overlap between geography and drama, and I ended up going with geography because geography, like, she was my form tutor, I had a natural connection with her, so I ended up going with geography. But I really enjoyed drama and those confidence skills, those being able to interact with people. I mean, those are things that are so important and relevant in the 21st century, and I genuinely believe that what we've got at the moment is a knowledge-based curriculum that doesn't actually give children the right tools to go on to succeed beyond like life at school. I mean, do you feel like that's kind of, obviously you work in education. I mean, do you find
Sorry, say that again, TJ.
Do you find that? I mean, you work in education. Do you find that?
Yeah, no, absolutely. You know, there's nothing wrong with having knowledge base in our curriculum. It's important. Of course it is. But if we don't start to look at the characters, the character traits that we need to be teaching our young children to have, to find their way and to find their place in the world, it's really going to be quite difficult for them. And it's all well and good, you know, leaving school with 12 A starter A's, but if you don't have that character, that resilience, that grit, that confidence to go out into a world to understand, you know, how to take your next step or what you're going to do, or to think about those things. I think we're doing our young people a disservice, and it's not every school is not considering these things. There are some schools who really have thought about character education, and seen the importance of that, and seen the development and the progress that young people can make in the curriculum. You know, looking at the core subjects through character education is being like kind of marrying them together, seeing that can be really powerful for our young people. And actually, if character education came from, you know, if we look at the early years curriculum, how amazing that is, how we allow young people to, you know, our children to do things that, you know, they're learning things that they want to learn, they drive the things they want to do. And then suddenly they come into, you know, key stage 1, and it's all very rigid. We have to do these particular things. And so for me, we've suddenly gone from allowing this creativity and this innovation to happen from, you know, young, to coming into schools and it not being there.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, like at a young age, when you're between the age of 4 and 7, Jesus Christ, you should be playing. You should be like having fun, and like kind of. I think a teacher's job in some respects at that age should be getting them to like inspire them to want to learn, opposed to actually just like teaching like the phonics. Do you know what I mean? Jesus Christ, I appreciate it. It's important to learn the core subjects, right? But the kids, I mean, what are you doing trying to test them at 5 years old? Jesus Christ, leave it alone. Do you know what I mean? And I mean, like you look at Finland's model, they don't have any exams until the age of 17. Like that is when they first have their exam, because it's all very much building people and building like adapting the curriculum based on the children. And I think like for some children, naturally, they might be good at exams. And that's fair enough. Like I think 15% of the people that go through the UK education system like will really benefit from the education model that is in the UK. But about 85% of children will go through school life thinking that they're not good enough, and they've got no chance in succeeding, because we put so much emphasis on the GCSE and A levels and going to a top university. But I mean, there's so many industries out there now that degrees just are completely irrelevant. I mean, we've said many times that degrees are so common nowadays. I mean, it's about what makes you stand out. And if you're not going into that interview showing, like, making eye contact, being firm, being authoritative, and showing us something about you, you're not going to necessarily get that job. Do you know what I mean?
You know, you make a really interesting point, because this is going back a few months ago. Alistair Stewart and David Harkin, who's the CEO for 7 Billion Ideas, they did a session on, you know, what is education, you know, skills versus knowledge-based education. And one of the, I think it was a director for IBM, I can't remember, I really apologise, but said, you know, we don't even look at the CV. We don't care what university you went to. We don't care what GCSEs you have. It's all about who you are as a person and whether or not you're going to fit into our company. And it was this kind of very similar conversations with, you know, the director or the CEO for LinkedIn. And it was like, oh, you know, and yet we talk and we tell children, you know, if you don't pass your GCSEs, you know, that's it for you. And that's just the wrong conversations we need to be having. And the be all and end all shouldn't be GCSEs, and that shouldn't be what education is about. And we shouldn't be, you know, testing, or no, not testing. We shouldn't be teaching to exams or teaching for tests. And this is one of the, you know, the 10 hopes for education, for change in education, that's part of the big change, where we need to start looking at each and every individual child, building relationships with those children and allowing them to guide their own learning, because we said this before, we keep doing the same things and expecting different outcomes, but that's never going to happen.
Yeah. I mean, there's obviously that cliche saying, make a mistake once, it's a mistake, second time you're an idiot. I mean, we're literally led in this country by idiots, aren't we? I mean, they keep making the same mistakes again and again and again. I'm not talking about head teachers, sorry, I mean, that came across wrong. I'm talking about politicians, and I'm talking about the people at the top of the education food chain. DFE, Jesus Christ, DFE, the examining boards, they need, and teacher unions need to come together, say, look, no more politics within education. We need to actually do do something that's going to make a difference to these kids. It's all well and good, like a couple of schools, not a couple, there's quite a lot of schools that are doing really well academically and they're outstanding schools. Fantastic, brilliant. But what are you doing for your children? I mean, this is what education is about. You get into teaching because you want to make a difference to these kids. You want them to set them up for life. Having a piece of paper at the end of your time that you go like in school is not doing that. I'm sorry, it's not. And like, if someone was to come to me with a job, like for a job, and they had all A stars, but they couldn't talk to me, and they had somebody that had no GCSEs or whatsoever, but had something about them, I mean, I'd pick that person without the GCSEs all day long. You know, I mean,
I don't think, we can't devalue the credentials that young people are getting. Certainly, if you get 12 A stars, that's amazing. That's all credit to you. You've worked really hard. You've done really well. You've got the GCSE results, and you've got that piece of paper to say, look how hard I've worked. I'm really good. But like you say, if you don't have those skills to be able to hold conversations, to be confident, to show that you can present well, to look at somebody in the eye when you're talking to them, those kinds of things, they don't look great. And I do know plenty of people as adults who did leave school with fantastic GCSEs, but didn't quite follow their dreams because they didn't know how to get them. Yeah. We've spoken lots of times about, career advice and education. When I was at school, it was non-existent. I had somebody who didn't know me asking me what I wanted to do when I left school. I have no idea. So there's so much that we need to do as a school, but unfortunately there's other things that the government and the DfE are now presenting to us, and especially now during COVID times. Now we've got to provide testing. Now we've got to do this. Blended learning, all of these different things will make this a lot harder for us. But it's not something that we don't want to do because we recognise how important it is for young people. But certainly, I've kind of gone off on a bit of a tangent now, haven't I? Going back to, building character and resilience and grit and all of these things in our young people, I think certainly has got to be part of the curriculum that we move to moving forward, yeah.
I mean, just kind of touching base on something you said just at the beginning there, right? You said, if you've got 12 A stars, it shows you've worked really hard. But that's not necessarily always the case, because I know people that just are suck at exams, but they worked really, really hard, but they wouldn't have got those 12 A stars. I mean, does it? Because some people are naturally more clever or are very good at memorizing information. Yeah. But what about the application of that information? I mean,
and I agree, because, when I was at school, we were allowed to have a percentage of the exam that was coursework. And honestly, that saved me because I wasn't able to revise in a logical way, in a chronological way, in any kind of way. I just couldn't do it. And I really struggled to memorize formulas and stuff like that. Now, you have to have formulas and formulae, memorized. Yeah. In maths. I mean, there's just absolutely no way that is even necessary. You think about technology today and how we use technology. Why are we not encouraging the use of technology? Why are we not making exams more project-based to see where these children are going to research, how they're going to conduct certain, projects, what outcomes are they going to have, and what avenues they'll take. It's just boggles my mind that we say, you must memorize this, you must read this book from the 18th century, and I mean,
it's true. I mean, what kid is like, listen, if you grew up in East London, right, how are you meant to understand Shakespeare in the nicest way possible? But the language.
I love Shakespeare.
I know you might, but I'm not talking about those kids that are from like the ones that listen to grime music, or the ones that are kind of like, obviously the world has changed so much, but those kids can just about speak proper English, let alone trying to speak language that was spoken 200 years ago,
But it depends what you mean by proper. I'm going to hold you to account here. It depends what you mean by proper English, because again, language is changing. And so if we're talking about our education system changing, looking at how things are changing for young people now on the street, not on the street, in our society, surely we should be thinking about, well, what is education for? Is it for, you know, now, or is it for a future that we can't even see ourselves, you know, because we probably won't be alive then, you know. So part of that is what you were saying earlier on about, you know, building that character, seeing, you know, how you can find your place in the world. You and I both left school not knowing that we were good enough, not feeling that we were good enough. And that is so wrong. And I can tell you now, TJ, this is not unheard of. This is so happens so often to a lot of people who leave school, feel that they're not good enough for the world, and so that's something that needs to change in itself, isn't it?
I mean, absolutely. I mean, you talk about an increase in mental health. I mean, it all stems from this. Like, this is, I mean, it stems from not feeling good enough, insecure. It feels not being happy within yourself, or not genuinely not feeling good enough. I mean, I have a nephew that studies 8 hours a day over the holidays. I mean, whether he studies fully or not, I mean, but it's that attention span.
You might do.
But what I'm trying to say, though, he doesn't feel like he's very good. I mean, he's in like quite a low sets and stuff, but he thinks that he's not going to necessarily be successful. I mean, I've got him to, like, he showed me that he's doing prank calling, right? And he's so good on the phone. I mean, he literally was like making people believe all these stories and that. I mean, he's 15 years old, do you know what I mean? And he's convincing these adults that, oh, he's this person and all of this, right? But why are we not kind of bringing that? Like, he's got a passion for it. Like, I mean, we should be honing in on that skill. But he thinks he sucks at school. And he thinks he's not going to have a real life. I mean, like, you talk about preparing someone for real life. He thinks he's going to leave school, magically get a degree, magically get a job, and magically buy a house. I mean, I'm like, yeah, but how are you going to actually do that? I mean, do you know what it takes to buy a house? Do you know how much you need to save up? No, I mean, I'll just get a job.
Yeah, and actually, Akala was live on LinkedIn during lockdown. I love Akala. He's amazing. But he talked about, you know, he left school with 12A starter A's, you know, really intelligent guy. But actually, he had no idea what rent was, what a mortgage was, what interest rates were, what the FTSE 100 was. None of these things he understood when he left. And as an adult, you know, as a child moving into adulthood and into the real world, suddenly you're faced with all of these things. And if you have not, you don't have that kind of understanding, suddenly things become a lot harder. And not having that understanding of things becoming harder, and not having the character and the resilience and the understanding of how to find these things out, things get worse. And we've talked about, you know, NEET, young people who are NEET, not in education, employment or training. And the figures in 2015 of young people who leave school and they are NEET by the time they are 19 years old, nearly 20% of those young people die before their 21st birthday. That was in 2015. I don't know what the figures are now. I don't think they've been re-released since then. I can sure as hell believe that they are going to be a lot more. But nearly 20% of young people dying by their 21st birthday. School, for those young people, is a matter of life and death.
Yeah.
And it's that, is it, you know, that is as hard as that may sound, as harsh as that may sound, that is the reality for those young people. And so it's not good enough for us to be saying, if you don't pass these GCSEs, you're not going to, you know, what are you going to do in your life? I know plenty of people that didn't, and they had the character and the resilience to find their way, and they are now earning a shed load more than I am, you know. Yeah. But again, it comes down to that: what is education? What should we be doing at school?
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. And I think sometimes that people are under this misconception, and I mean, look, everyone's to their own, but my understanding of what a teacher should be is, and it's very easy for me to say because I'm not in the classroom, I'm not doing planning and marketing. And I'm not
be careful what you're about to say here, yeah?
Ultimately, your job as a teacher is not just to pass information on to them and get them ready for exams. You know, like a lot of kids, like you said, it's a safe place for them. Like, they don't have those role models at home. They don't have those inspirations at home. They don't have that support and love. So when they come to school, those teachers are that for them. And I know it's a burden for teachers to bear. And I know it's unfair in some respects because it's not your job to be their parent. But in some respects, if you're going to go into education to make a difference to these kids, you're taking on that burden, right?
Yeah, and I think it comes down to the relationships that you build with young people. Look, I'm going to be honest, I came from a household that was, both my parents were still together. They were, they loved me and my brothers and my sister dearly. They supported us. I didn't go a day without food. I was a very, very lucky young person, but I didn't have the confidence, to really, and the belief in myself that I was ever good enough. So, I mean, I see what you're saying. Yes, if you don't have that stability at home, things for you are a lot harder, and trauma and adverse childhood experiences on young people has a huge impact on their experiences at school and how they learn and the progress they can make. Absolutely. But I think that's for all young people. I think if we consider how we want to be treated, how are we going to treat our young people in our classroom is so important. And all too often, we think that discipline has to come down with this hard line. But life isn't about that. When you leave school, if I go to the office, or if you go to an office, you're in a different industry and you've forgotten your pen, you're not given a detention for forgetting your pen, or you're not disciplined for it. Someone just throws over a pen at you. And so are we teaching children what the realities are of the world? Is the world really like that? And does it teach responsibilities? And what does responsibility look like? And how can we teach that in our classrooms, through having different monitors or giving different people different roles to have in school,
And that's the thing. I mean, like, I remember when I first left school and I went into a job, and I remember it's the first time I got told off by a boss. And I remember him saying to me, like, stop making excuses. I don't care about your excuses. Just get the job done. Do you know what I mean? Whereas in school, you don't do your homework, you come up with all these excuses, you get detention, right? But we're not preparing kids. It's not about making excuses. It's just get on with it. Where's that grit? Where's that innovation? That creativity? It's okay to fail, make mistakes, but you learn.
And that's hard. I think that's probably the hardest thing we need to try and teach young people, that it's okay to fail. But is it okay?
It's not okay if you're.
No, I'm talking do we allow that? Is it okay to fail when, you have people like Ofsted and the DFE and, the wonderful Mr. Williams, and prior to him, Mr. Gove and Miss Morgan, saying it's not okay to fail. But we don't give those, it's about those opportunities. We don't have those opportunities to fail and then get back up, because we're so constrained by different priorities that every school will have according to what school they leave. It's hard.
I mean, the thing is, though, obviously children absorb the teacher's energy, right? But teachers and school leaders are so afraid to fail because of the pressures put on them by Ofsted and leaderboards. So ultimately, it's going to be reflected in the students too, right?
Yeah. You think about performance management as well, TJ. There are so many schools where performance management targets are 100% of your students will get a grade X, 4 to 4+. That's never a guaranteed, and that's not how performance management should be. And where's that development for staff? Where's that time that staff can really consider their own career professional development? How where's the time for staff to really make sure that their knowledge of their own subject is up to date, or is where it needs to be? Sorry, we're going off in all sorts of different.
But also, where is the ability to encourage staff to go out, try something different, and it'd be okay to fail as long as you try to do something different for your kids that was going to inspire them? I mean,
I have worked under some fantastic head teachers who when I first came into senior leadership, and it's so easy, you can quite easily get excited by different projects, and you really want to have an impact. And I had an amazing head teacher at the time, and she's now a CEO of the trust, Kathy Barr, and she just said, actually, it's okay to take a risk, and if it fails, as long as we know why it failed and how it failed, and we learn from those mistakes, we just keep going. And that's a really good example of a head teacher that's happy to say, if this fails, we can try something new. But again, it depends on where that school is in their journey. You know, if you're a requires improvement school or you're in special measures, there's no room to make mistakes. We have to get this right. This is how it feels, you know.
I mean, ultimately, if they're RI or if they're special measures, then Jesus Christ, we've got to try something new. I mean, it can't get any worse, can it? So why aren't teachers who have trained so long, they've trained in the specialism for 3 years as in their undergrad, then they've gone on to get a PGCE, and then they've had their induction year. Why are we not putting more trust in teachers to do what they do? Like, if we give them the right support, the right level of training, the right level of CPD, the right room for progression, why are we not being able to give our trust to our teachers?
We're asking the same question. We ask the same question. And so, you know, if you can ever get Mr. Gove or Mr. Williamson or Ofsted to do a podcast with you or webcast with you and have that conversation with them, because, you know, as far as I can see, there's nobody at the moment who's having a real conversation with educators, with head teachers, with senior leaders, because, you know, I know Heads Up for Head Teachers have recently did a poll because Michael Gove had come out and said that I've consulted with head teachers, and over 1,800, I believe, head teachers had replied to this poll, and out of all of them, 1%, I think, had said we've been consulted. 1%. And I'd like to know who these head teachers are, because you know, what is it you were consulted on, and what was the response that you gave? Because it's our voices are not being heard, and we are the specialists. We are the people who know what the job entails. So without listening to us or consulting with us, how are you going to move our education system forward? And part of me, if I'll be honest with you, the cynical part of me is, I don't think they want to move it forward.
Yeah.
Because they want this divide in our society. You know, you've got your top 1% of people who are making their money, who are happy in their glass houses, not a problem. And the rest of us, well, you know, we'll just keep trying. So I'm getting all political now, and I shouldn't do that. This is what you do to me every time we have a chat. Sorry.
But that's your passion, isn't it? I mean, and that's the thing, and in the nicest way possible. But teachers across the board, a lot of teachers feel that way. They feel like they're not being consulted, they're not being appreciated, they're not being respected, and they're not being valued as professionals within the profession. Just because you've been to a hospital when you've had like an operation on your leg after you've broken a leg, it doesn't mean you can go operate on somebody's leg. Do you know what I mean?
Or that you can explain how to run the NHS. You know, this is honestly, TJ, head teachers are on their knees.
Yeah.
They are on their knees right now. They are receiving emails on a Saturday evening at 9 o'clock saying, please have a look at this document and give me some feedback by Monday so that we can put this together. We've had how many weeks before Christmas to know how to prepare for the new year? And even now, things are being changed at lastminute.com. It is not okay on the well-being of our leaders, which will then entail have an impact on the well-being of our staff who are already, you know, they're nervous about going back into schools, but they're not saying, no, we're not going in. We want to be in schools. Our schools, yes, they should be open, but they need to be safe. And they're not talking to us, and they're not telling us, giving us the right time to put things together, because guidance is coming out too late. And this is how people are going to be losing their lives. It's not okay.
Yeah, I agree. And absolutely, it needs to change. I mean, it's important that we listen to the teachers. They're on the front line. They're the ones that are making a difference. And ultimately, if senior leaders are burnt out, if teachers are burnt out, if they're worried, if they're anxious, what is the quality of education going to be like? You know, exactly. And ultimately, that's what's important. It's about kind of making sure we're talking about the future of our economy, the future of the workforce. Well, we need to give them the right tools. We need schools to be prepared. We need better communication, and ultimately, this all comes down to a breakdown in communication between the actual education profession and the people that are making the decisions. There is this big gap between what is being needed and what is being communicated, you know, and that ultimately, in my opinion, we need to follow the bias suit. We need a Ministry of Education full of educators, completely separate entity to politics. And I know I spoke to a couple of head teachers saying, listen, why are you bothered? I mean, as long as you work in your school and you're doing the best for your kids, that's all that matters. And absolutely rightly so as well in some respects. But if we're going to move education forward, I mean, every child has got to have access to a good quality education. And we need to work collaboratively to make that happen.
And I love that idea in that model of every school supporting every school. But because, you know, you've got the introduction of league tables and suddenly it's my school and not your school. It's I'm working on this. Don't get me wrong, you do have school consortiums that do work together. But I tell you what, if both schools needed, or every school needed a really good English teacher or a really good science teacher, it's cutthroat. It's, you know, I need to get that person or the best person in my school. And actually, there should be no islands. There should be an open communication of resources, of the best things that we're doing, you know, and how we're going to support each other, because young people are young people. And we've come into education because we want to make a difference to young people, and we want to make them and support them to be the best that they can possibly be. So there shouldn't be a competition between schools, and whether people like to admit it or not, when it comes down to it, there is, and yet we, you know, we're in this together, in this whole COVID situation together, and we have, you know, we've had head teachers who are supporting one another. There are networks that are out there supporting head teachers to make the right decisions, or to just be a soundboard for them. You know, you've got the Heads Up for Head Teachers that I've spoken to you about. Essentially, if we work together, we would have an amazing system for our young people, and then those young people who can't cope in mainstream schools, there's this idea that we're supporting with those young. It's like the community coming together, schools coming together, teachers coming together, everyone working together to provide the best possible opportunities for our young people. Businesses working in schools, you know, it's not.
We've been individualistic way too long. I mean, we need to be collaborative, and if we're going to move education, it's not okay that one kid gets an outstanding school because of where he's born, and a kid down the road from him goes to a requiring improvement or a special measure school just because of location. I mean, they might be from exact same deprived areas or like affluent areas, but because of where he's born in location, and that is just literally down one road, I've seen it sometimes, that he doesn't get the same quality of education. It's absolutely bonkers. It shouldn't.
I think that's really difficult, because I've worked in special measures, requires improvement, outstanding schools. I've worked across the board, and you know, and I've worked in schools where they are good schools, but often are coming after a day of inspection or 2 days of inspection said actually there requires improvement. But I can tell you now, I would send my own children to that school because it's not a requires improvement school. So we've got to be really careful about how, you know, this is how Ofsted are working and what they're doing in schools, and whether or not it's a real true reflection of what's happening in that school 365 days, well, 365 days a year, but you know what I mean, like all year round, rather than those 2 days where anything can happen. And it's the same for kids in exams. You know, you can have a really good kid who does really well in their mock exams and in every other exam prior to their actual GCSE, but they've had a bad day. They've woke up in the morning and things aren't quite right. They're suffering anxiety, or they've had to deal with something at home and they don't do as well in that GCSE, and that lasts with them for the rest of their life. You know, I'm 43. Or am I 42? I never get it right. After the 33s, I forgot. You know, and I still have to write down what I got for my GCSEs. Is it relevant? Are GCSEs the way forward? Are these exams the way we need to be going?
I mean, I'm not being funny, Zena, but I mean, like if somebody put on their GCSEs that they got all A's, when are you really going to go check? Like, not being funny, right? But I mean, look, GCSEs, I don't think are an indication of who you are as a person if you're going to be right for a job. That's the bottom line. I don't think that. And I think I'd be interested to know where you think Ofsted kind of stands and what part you actually think it needs to play within the education system.
I think if Ofsted came in as the support that schools need, it's, you know, okay, you've now told us we requires improvement. What is it you're going to do to support us to get to that good you expect us to do? To come in, you know, once or twice, doing a few monitoring visits and saying, yeah, you're doing well, isn't good enough. Actually, we need to be working together, because I'm not saying that there's no, you know, there's no place for Ofsted. Certainly there is, but, you know, the pressure that's put on schools to do things in the way that Ofsted expect us to do things. Therefore, you know, why if I'm a senior leader, okay, and I'm really concerned about what Ofsted think about, then I'm more likely to do things for Ofsted and to make sure that I'm getting that outstanding or that good, okay? But actually, that's not what we should be concerning ourselves with. We need to concern ourselves with what's right for children, because Ofsted don't always get things right. And so their framework isn't always the right framework. And their framework changes so much that we have to then change things. We're not given enough time to do things for it to have the real impact it needs, because things either at the DFB or Ofsted are changing. So what is it we're doing? Are we doing Every Child Matters? Are we doing SMSE? Are we, what are we doing? What is our focus going to be on? And can we make sure, and this is again with politicians who come in and change every few months, they come in with their own agenda. They're not really thinking about what's right for children. And I'm not suggesting that Ofsted don't care about what's right for children. All I'm saying is that they need to consider what their framework looks like, and how they're measuring against that framework, and look at the context of each and every individual school, because we're all different. We are all different.
Absolutely. And that's the thing. And this is what I think sometimes the framework of Ofsted and leaderboards do, is it kills individuality. And again, this goes straight back to children. If we're going to just forget beating around the bush, go straight to it. We need to be creating individuality in these children. But how are we going to do that if we are generalising education? And it's so important that we kind of make sure that Ofsted go into a school as a supportive friend, say, forget judgments. I don't agree with RI's special measures outstanding good, because every single school should be good, right? So what they should be doing is going in saying, look, this is what you need to do to improve. This is what the school down the road is doing that is actually performing really well. And this will bring somebody in, like a lead practitioner or somebody that's in that department, come in and spend 3 months with you. And they're going to help you move this department forward or this school forward in a particular way. What we'll do is we'll come check in those at the end of those 3 months to make sure you're making the right amount of progress. Yeah. Boom. That is going to be.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with you. I can't disagree with that at all. I think that's a brilliant way forward. Whether or not that happens, this is the opportunity. During COVID, it should have been the opportunity. But I have to say, just a quick shout out to Big Picture Learning and Colin Joffin, who is the director of Big Picture Learning in the UK. I'd love you to have a chat with him. Their whole curriculum is led by children, led by young people, and it's phenomenal. So if you ever get a chance to look at what they do, I would absolutely say go for it, because there is another way. There is another way, and we have to consider what those other ways are. Yeah. And be able to have that time to experience them and explore them.
Exactly. I mean, just to finish off, I mean, if you could pinpoint one thing that you would like to see change in education by the end of 2021, what would it be for you personally?
It has to be the curriculum, and it has to be making sure that our curriculum is decolonised. We need to have representation of all of our children in our curriculum, making sure that we're looking at the 9 protected characteristics within our curriculum, that it's not the way it is right now. I don't think it encourages exploration. I don't think it encourages creativity enough. And I think that we need to think about how our young people are going to see themselves in the curriculum that they're learning. If I'd be honest, that's one of the very, very many things I would love to change.
Absolutely. And just to kind of read out something Phil Sharrock said, right? And I think it's so important. I'm just hoping that I can quickly find it. I can. Well, I mean, I can't find it. Oh, there you go. So he goes, just a thought, the school system completely squashes creative free thinkers. Some teachers have no idea how much power their words and actions hold throughout a kid's life. Individuality should be encouraged and praised always. I mean, it's so powerful. I mean, this guy's had 199 likes, and I don't know, in 3 days. I mean, I don't know if anyone is like knows about LinkedIn, but to get 199 likes on a post is insane. But clearly, the teaching profession, I do feel that. I mean, I speak to educators. All they say is knowledge-based curriculums need to change. I mean, some are not uneducated, but they don't have an opinion on it yet. And it's like, you're a head teacher and you don't have an opinion on a knowledge-based curriculum versus soft skills. What are you doing in the 21st century as a head teacher?
I think it's really easy, but again, if you think about the constraints that we have within our curriculum, the league tables that we're constantly considering, well, not all people are considering them, and I think that's the right way to go. Ofsted, you've got all sorts of different constraints. I just think it comes down to us not being able to see another way sometimes. Wanting that other way and being able to have the freedom to do the other way are two very different things. And I would agree that the impact that we have on our young people is really, really important. And the things that we say to them, like he says, will have an impact. I still remember some of the not very nice things teachers said to me when I was younger, and the impact that had on me as a child into my adulthood are profound. So, you know, and I'm going to do a last shout out to L30 Relational Systems, because the things that they're doing are phenomenal. Love the idea of repairing relationships with young people and having a more restorative and relational approach to behaviour is really key and vital now. I think if we continue to have things like foods in isolation rooms, and if we continue to just think about sanctions rather than prevention of these behaviours that we don't want to see, we're just going to be you know, continuing to be part of the problem that's rising the mental health issues in our young people. So
absolutely,
we could do this for hours, couldn't we?
I mean, we could. I mean, we'll leave it there. And just as a final question, I think if anybody's still listening, hopefully they are. I mean, just to kind of, if you're in education, you're a teacher, please, and especially head teachers that aren't thinking about soft skills, please ask yourself, why did you get into education? And the answer should be along the lines of, you want to make a difference to kids. Please understand, through a knowledge-based curriculum, you are not making a difference to kids' lives post-school for 85% of the students that go to your school. We need to make a difference and prepare kids better. And ultimately, this is what this podcast is all about. So thank you massively, Zena, for coming on. And thank you, everyone, for watching as usual. And obviously, we'll see you in the next episode. But thanks, Zena. Really appreciate it.
Take care, love.
Take care.